At our graduation dinner, in front of all our classmates, Brandon Carter handed his Coke to Candy Hayes. Without a second thought, she took it and drank a sip. On the drive home, I told her we were breaking up. She frowned. Just because I drank Brandon's Coke? I nodded. Sonny, you're being ridiculous, she scoffed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Does it really matter that much? Fine. If you want to break up, we'll break up. Just don't come crawling back. Candy was so sure I couldn't live without her that she agreed instantly. But she had no idea. This time I meant it. The first thing I did when I got home was change my college application. I switched the UCLA acceptance we'd planned on together to Carnegie Mellon, from one coast to the other, so we'd never have to see each other again. For the next few days, my phone was a dead weight in my pocket. Candy never reached out, not even a single punctuation mark in a text. I'd stare at our message history, my thumb hovering over the screen before I'd pull it back and laugh at myself. She was always like this, always waiting for me to be the one to give in. The day our final scores were released, my friend Leo Davis called to remind me it was his birthday. The party was at our usual karaoke bar downtown. When I pushed open the door to the room, a blast of cold air and loud music hit me, making me feel a little disoriented. There were already a dozen people inside, mostly classmates. My eyes scanned the room automatically, and then I saw her in the corner. Candy. She was wearing the red dress I'd given her, laughing with a few other girls. The colored lights danced across her face, making her skin look flawless. Sonny, over here. Leo waved me over. I took the beer he offered, and we clinked bottles before I downed it. I had barely sat down when a shadow fell over me. It was Candy looking down at me with that familiar, impatient smirk. Sonny, come outside for a minute. I need to talk to you. The hallway was dimly lit, and the thin walls did little to block the muffled sound of singing from the next room. Candy leaned against the wall, twisting a strand of her hair around her finger. It was a nervous habit she had whenever she was getting annoyed. Are you done with this tantrum? She started, as if I were some child throwing a fit. It's been 5 days. You should be over it by now. I stared at her cherry red lips. I remembered the way she drank Brandon's Coke without hesitation, the drop of soda that clung to the corner of her mouth. She had just wiped it away with the back of her hand, completely oblivious to why it was a problem. I'm not throwing a tantrum, I said, my voice calmer than I expected. We broke up. It's over. Candy's smile faltered for a second before returning. Over a sip of Coke? Sonny, when did you get so insecure? She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume. The scent I used to love now just seemed sharp and unpleasant. Brandon just handed it to me. We're all friends. What's the big deal? Just handed it to you. I scoffed. He walked around half the table, past everyone else, just to hand it to you. Candy's brow furrowed, and that familiar, condescending look returned to her face. So you were just staring at him? I just happen to have eyes, I said, clenching my fists. The sting of my nails in my palm helped me stay focused. And this isn't the first time. At the class picnic last year, he accidentally drank from your water bottle. During the track meet, he accidentally put his arm around your waist. And then there was... Enough. Candy cut me off, her voice rising. Sonny, do you have any idea how pathetic you sound right now? She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'm going to ask you one last time. Are we getting back together or not? Because after tonight, this offer is off the table. Just then, a tall figure blocked the light at the end of the hall. It was Brandon, holding 2 drinks, a look of perfect surprise on his face. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting? Candy's expression softened instantly. Brandon, what are you doing out here? You were gone for a while. I was worried you got lost, Brandon said with a smile, but his eyes were fixed on me. Sonny, long time no see. I didn't say anything. I just watched him stand beside Candy, so close their shoulders were almost touching. Brandon was half a head taller than her, and when he looked down at her, his eyelashes cast a shadow on her cheek. The picture they made was so perfect it hurt to look at. Candy, I brought you a lemonade. I remember you said your throat gets dry when you sing, Brandon said, handing her the cup. His fingers accidentally brushed against the back of her hand. Candy took it and smiled at him. Then she turned back to me, chin held high. See? This is just how normal friends act. Sonny, you're the one who's being too sensitive. Hearing this, Brandon put on a confused expression. Did I do something wrong? He asked, looking at me with an innocence that made me sick. Sonny, if there's a misunderstanding, we can talk it out right now. Candy's been in a really bad mood the last few days because of you, and I've been worried about her. Brandon, you don't have to explain, Candy said, patting his arm. She shot me a cold smile. Some people just love to overthink everything. Brandon sighed, looking at me with an expression of pure pity. You know, Sonny, Candy actually talks about you a lot. She says that even though you could be a little insecure, you're a good guy. He paused for effect. But you can't force feelings if you two really aren't right for each other. Brandon, I cut him off coldly. You know what I find most impressive about you? It's your ability to steal someone's girlfriend right under their nose while pretending to be the nice guy. Brandon's smile froze on his face. Candy, however, completely lost it. Sonny, what the hell are you talking about? I laughed. Then tell me, why does he always know the minute we have a fight? Why do the gifts I buy for you end up in his Facebook posts? What? That's enough. Candy shoved me hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. I see you for who you really are now, Sonny. You blame everyone else for your own issues. It's pathetic. Brandon is 100 times more thoughtful than you are. At least he doesn't get suspicious over every little thing. Brandon chose that moment to place a steadying hand on Candy's shoulder. Don't get upset, he murmured. He's not worth it. He then looked at me, his eyes full of the victor's condescending pity. Sonny, maybe you need to cool off. Candy, let's go back inside. Everyone's probably waiting. Candy yanked her arm away from my grasp. I didn't even realize I had grabbed her wrist. Without a single glance back, she walked away with Brandon. Just before they turned the corner, Brandon glanced back at me. The corner of his mouth lifted in a tiny, triumphant smirk, his eyes overflowing with satisfaction. I stood alone in the empty hallway as a gut-wrenching ballad started playing in the next room. When I walked out of the karaoke bar, the wave of hot summer air that hit me felt more sobering than the freezing AC inside. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. Dude, you left? Candy just announced she and Brandon are officially together. The whole class is going wild. You knew this was coming, right? I texted back, yeah, and turned my phone off. The harsh fluorescent lights of a 7-Eleven on the corner drew me in. I grabbed a Coke, twisted the cap off, and took a long swallow. The carbonation burned my throat and made my eyes water. So this is what it felt like to be over. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. In fact, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I looked up at the night sky, where a few faint stars were blinking. Carnegie Mellon University, over 2,000 miles away from San Diego. That should be far enough. When I got home, I closed my bedroom door. I could have sworn I could still smell the citrus perfume Candy always wore. I took a deep breath, pulled open my desk drawer, and started getting rid of everything that reminded me of her. The first thing was a blue scarf she had knitted for me our freshman winter. We hadn't known each other long, and she'd spent 2 weeks clumsily teaching herself how to knit. She pricked her fingers countless times, but she just smiled as she pushed the finished scarf into my hands. Sonny, you have to promise to wear it every winter, she'd said. I ran my thumb over the crooked stitches, and for a second, I could almost see the blush on her cheeks from that day. Next was a stack of movie ticket stubs. From La La Land to Endgame, we had seen them all together. Candy always had a habit of linking her pinky with mine in the dark theater, and we'd spend half an hour arguing about the plot afterward. Back then, it felt like I was the only person in her world. My hand froze as my fingers brushed against a small, hard box. Inside was a silver keychain engraved with the initials SC. We had made it a craft store the summer after sophomore year, right after we promised we'd both go to UCLA together. She had stood on her tiptoes and whispered in my ear, Sonny, let's be together forever, okay? I really thought we would be. And then Brandon Carter transferred to our school. The first time he showed up at our classroom door, I noticed something different in Candy's eyes. She was usually cold to new people, but she went out of her way to say hello to him. They became fast friends and started spending more and more time together. At first, Candy would still explain, probably worried I'd get the wrong idea. Brandon's just a new kid. I'm just helping him get settled. But slowly, his name started popping up in every other sentence she said. Brandon was great at basketball. Brandon won the math competition. Brandon this, Brandon that. I tried to ignore it until the class picnic. Brandon accidentally picked up Candy's water bottle and drank straight from it. Candy froze for a second, but instead of getting mad, she just laughed. Slow down, don't choke. In that moment, my stomach twisted. It was a sharp, sour feeling. Candy was a total germaphobe. She never let anyone drink from her bottle. Not even me. After that, Brandon's accidents started happening more often. At the track meet, he wrapped his arm around Candy's waist, claiming he was keeping her from falling. When it rained, he insisted on giving her his jacket, even when I was standing right there holding an umbrella for her. She was even late to my own birthday party, because she was helping Brandon at the library. Every time I tried to talk to her about it, she would just frown and say, "Sonny, don't read too much into it. Brandon and I are just friends." But she could never quite meet my eyes. The final straw was at a class party. Brandon pulled Candy up to dance in front of everyone. She knew how much I hated that, but she just smiled and put her hand on his shoulder. I was silent the entire ride home. But Candy was the first to speak. "Can you stop being so insecure?" Brandon was just trying to liven things up. Insecure? I had to laugh at that. If caring that your girlfriend is flirting with another guy makes me insecure, then I guess I'm insecure. I closed the little box and tossed the keychain into the trash. Tucked under the corner of my desk was a photo from freshman orientation week. Under the hot sun, Candy had snuck me a bottle of ice water and gotten caught, earning her punishment laps. I ran with her, and even though she was out of breath, she was still laughing. "Sonny, you're such an idiot." Back then, her world revolved around me. Now, she only had eyes for Brandon. I picked up the photo, ripped it in two, and dropped the pieces into the trash. After the last item was gone, my room felt strangely empty. I leaned against the window and stared out at the night sky. My phone kept buzzing with notifications from the class group chat, its screen lighting up the darkroom. I finally unlocked it, and my screen was flooded with pictures of Candy and Brandon. They were huddled close together, their smiles blinding. "Now, that's a perfect couple," someone had commented. Someone should have taken the hint and bowed out gracefully a long time ago. Brandon and Candy are made for each other. I heard Brandon is going to UCLA too, so they can stay together. I scrolled through the messages expressionlessly until I saw one from Brandon's friend. "What's a nerd like Sonny got compared to Brandon anyway?" It was followed by a bunch of laughing emojis. I stared at the screen for a moment, then shut my phone off completely. Finally, silence. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of cheerful voices downstairs. I opened my door to see my parents sitting in the living room with Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. The coffee table was covered with fruit and gift baskets. Candy was sitting off to the side, staring at the floor. "Sonny, come on down. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes came by to congratulate you," my mom called out with a smile. I hesitated on the stairs, a complicated feeling washing over me. They didn't know I had changed my college choice. "Sonny, my boy, we heard you were valedictorian. That's incredible," Mr. Hayes said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Our Candy did all right, but her score was nothing compared to yours." My dad jumped in, laughing. "Come on, Bill, don't say that. They're both brilliant kids." Mrs. Hayes chimed in enthusiastically. "So, Sonny, you've accepted your offer, right? We were so happy when you two decided on UCLA together. You'll be able to look out for each other." My expression must have soured. My mom, not noticing, nudged me. "Sonny, Mrs. Hayes asked you a question." I just nodded and said, "Yeah, it's all set." Candy looked up, a flicker of relief in her eyes. Mr. Hayes chuckled. "Once these two get to UCLA, they'll be even closer. Who knows, maybe after they graduate, our two families can finally—" "Dad," Candy interrupted, her face flushing with embarrassment. I glanced over at her and felt a cold smile form on my lips. Mr. Hayes continued, completely undeterred. "You know, Mark, why don't we just make it official? These two are so good together. We should start talking about setting a date for after they graduate." "Mr. Hayes," I said calmly, "Candy already has a boyfriend." The living room went completely silent. The smile on Mr. Hayes's face vanished, and Mrs. Hayes's expression froze. "What?" Mr. Hayes frowned, turning to his daughter. "Candy, what is he talking about?" Candy's face was as white as a sheet. Her hands were clenched in the fabric of her dress, and her lips trembled, but no words came out. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshot from the class group chat. It was a photo of Brandon and Candy, holding hands, their fingers intertwined. The caption read, "Here's to the rest of our lives." The air in the room was thick for a few seconds. Candy finally snapped out of it, forcing a weak smile. "Dad, Mom, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, don't listen to him. He's making it up. That was just a joke. Everyone was just messing around in the group chat." My mom frowned, clearly unconvinced. "A joke? That's not the kind of thing you joke about." Mrs. Hayes quickly agreed. "That's right, Candy. That's not proper behavior." Candy bit her lip, her eyes darting around. "It was really just our classmates teasing us. Brandon and I are not. We're not like that." As she said it, she shot me a glare filled with resentment. My dad, seeing the tension, stepped in with a nervous laugh. "Let's let the kids sort out their own business. We shouldn't get too involved. Come on, everyone. Let's eat before the food gets cold." The mood at the dinner table lightened up a little after that. but I could see Mr. and Mrs. Hayes still shooting worried glances at Candy, who just stared down at her plate, pushing her food around with her fork. After dinner, my dad patted me on the shoulder. "Son, why don't you take Candy for a walk around the block?" I was about to say no, but the look he gave me made me change my mind. I just nodded. Outside, the warm summer breeze felt heavy and humid. Candy walked a few steps ahead of me, then spun around, her face furious. "Sonny, what the hell was that? Why would you say that in front of my parents?" I just looked at her coldly. Was I lying? Was that picture in the group chat fake? She was speechless for a second. Then her embarrassment turned to anger. "It was a joke. Do you have any idea the trouble you just caused? If my dad believed you, he would kill me." "A joke?" I scoffed. "So you holding hands with Brandon was a joke? Announcing you were a couple was a joke too?" Candy's expression shifted and her voice softened. "Sonny, are you still mad about the other day? I told you Brandon and I are just friends. You're just being paranoid." I looked her straight in the eye. "Candy, do you really think I'm that stupid? That I'm that easy to fool? Is that what friends do? Do friends announce to everyone that they're a couple?" She just stared at me, stunned, as if she never expected me to push back. After a moment, she let out a cold laugh. "You've changed, Sonny. You never used to be this aggressive." I looked up at the sparse stars in the night sky. "Yeah, I have changed," I said. "But people are supposed to change, aren't they?" We walked away from each other after that, with nothing else to say. When I got back, my parents were on the couch watching TV. "Sonny," my mom asked, "is your college decision really final?" I nodded. "Mom, Dad," I said calmly, "I've accepted the offer from Carnegie Mellon." My dad paused with the remote in his hand before setting it down gently. My mom was quiet for a moment, then she sighed. "We kind of figured," she said. There was no judgment in her voice, only concern. "You've seemed so down lately. We knew something was wrong between you and Candy." My dad put a hand on my shoulder. "Son, whatever you decide, we'll support you. Carnegie Mellon is a fantastic school. All that matters is that you're happy." I felt a lump form in my throat and just nodded. They had known all along how I was feeling. They were just giving me space. Late that night, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep. My phone suddenly rang, flashing an unknown number. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Sonny, what the hell is your problem?" It was Brandon's angry voice. "Do you have any idea that Candy's been crying all night because of you?" I tightened my grip on the phone, but didn't say anything. "She's drunk right now, and she won't stop saying your name," he said, his voice dripping with provocation. A second later, a picture message came through. It was Candy, slumped over a table, looking drunk, with tear stains on her cheeks. I stared at the photo for a few seconds before letting out a cold laugh. "Brandon, who do you think you're fooling?" There was a pause on the other end, and then his voice turned dark. "Sonny, don't be an idiot. Candy still has feelings for you. Do you really have to be this cruel?" "Cruel?" I scoffed. "Aren't you two already together? Your adorable couple photos are all over the group chat." That was just... Before he could finish a sentence, I hung up and blocked his number. I didn't see Candy again for the rest of the summer. The class group chat, however, was constantly active with photos from her and Brandon's summer trip. The beach, the mountains, and amusement park, they were smiling brightly in every shot. The comments were filled with congratulations, as if everyone had completely forgotten that she and I had ever been a thing. I would scroll past them in silence, feeling surprisingly calm. Then one day, someone tagged me in the chat. "Sonny, you've been quiet. A little jealous, maybe?" It was followed by a string of laughing emojis. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the Leave Group button for a long moment before I finally pressed it. The rest of the summer flew by, and soon enough, it was time for college move-in day. My parents insisted on driving me to the airport, giving me advice the entire way. My mom's eyes were red as she said, "Call us often when you get there, okay? Don't make us worry." My dad just patted my shoulder. "Work hard. Make yourself proud." I nodded, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. Right before I boarded, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Candy. "Sonny, I'm waiting for you at the UCLA freshman check-in. Don't be late." I froze. Did she really still think I was going to UCLA? I stared at the message, then typed out a reply. "Don't worry. I won't be late." Then I blocked her number. As the plane took off, I watched the San Diego skyline shrink below me, feeling lighter than I had in years. Meanwhile, Candy Hayes stood the freshman check-in tables at UCLA, tapping impatiently at her phone. The September sun was brutal, and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She scanned the crowd for the 7th time, but still couldn't find the familiar face she was looking for. "Where is Sonny?" she muttered, her frown deepening. Brandon stood beside her, holding an umbrella to shade her from the sun. His voice was soft, but laced with a carefully crafted tone of pity. Candy, stop waiting, he said. A guy like Sonny probably chickened out at the last minute. He doesn't even have the guts to face you. Candy didn't answer, just bit her lip and kept staring at her phone. The message she had sent showed a read receipt, but there was still no reply. Seeing her frustration, Brandon sighed softly and said, with feigned sympathy, "You know, I've always thought this. Sonny was never good enough for you. He's so sensitive and suspicious. He couldn't even handle you having normal friends. And now he can't even be bothered to show up on time. It just shows how little he actually cares about you." Candy's fingers paused on her screen as a strange feeling pricked at her. She suddenly remembered all the ways Sonny used to be good to her. How he'd warm her hands in the winter, hold an umbrella over her in the rain. How he once drove all over town just to find the specific brand of tea that helped with her cramps. These memories pricked at her conscience, making her feel suddenly irritable. "Brandon, don't talk about him like that," she finally said, her voice sharp. Brandon looked taken aback for a second. Then his expression shifted to one of hurt. "Candy, I just hate seeing you treated like this. Look, it's 100 degrees out here, you've been waiting for hours, and he can't even send you a text. I would never, ever let you feel this way. You deserve so much better." Candy didn't respond. Instead, she opened her contacts and called Sonny's number. But all she heard was the cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed is not available at this time." Her heart dropped, and her fingers started to tremble. She tried calling a few more times, but got the same result. A terrible feeling started to creep in. She quickly opened iMessage, only to find that Sonny's contact photo was gone, and her messages were no longer being delivered. "He blocked me?" Candy whispered, her face draining of all color. Brandon leaned in, feigning shock. "No way. I can't believe Sonny would be that cruel." "Candy, don't be upset. A guy like that isn't worth your tears. It's better that it's over." Anxious and annoyed, Candy suddenly shoved him away. "Just shut up." Ignoring the shocked look on Brandon's face, she dialed Mr. Miller's number. When he answered, his voice sounded tired. "Candy, is everything okay? Mr. Miller, has Sonny. Has he left for school yet?" she asked frantically, clinging to a last shred of hope. "I've been waiting for him at UCLA for hours. Did he oversleep or something?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Mr. Miller sighed. "Candy, didn't Sonny tell you? He changed his mind. He's going to Carnegie Mellon. His flight was this morning. He should be landing in Pittsburgh right about now." The words hit Candy like a physical blow, and the phone nearly slipped from her hand. "What? Carnegie Mellon?" she stammered. "Why? Why would he change his mind? Why didn't he tell me?" "Mr. Miller's voice was calm but distant. "Candy, it's not our place as parents to get involved in your lives. But Sonny was very serious about this decision. I hope you can respect that." After she hung up, Candy just stood there as the world seemed to spin around her. A buzzing filled her ears, and her mind was flooded with memories of her time with Sonny. His gentle smile, all the little things he did for her without being asked, and the look of pure disappointment in his eyes the last time she saw him. "Candy, are you okay?" Brandon asked, reaching for her arm. She violently shook him off. "Get away from me," she screamed, her eyes red. "This is all your fault. If it wasn't for you and your stupid games, Sonny would never have left." Brandon's expression hardened before melting into a look of hurt. "Candy, how can you say that? It was Sonny who was being insecure. He couldn't handle you just having friends. He didn't trust you. What kind of relationship is that?" Candy froze, her mind filled with images of Sonny. She remembered the graduation dinner, the way his face fell when she took that Coke from Brandon without a second thought. She remembered how after every fight, he was always the first one to apologize, and how she had taken it for granted. She even remembered him asking her once, so carefully, "Candy, could you maybe keep a little distance from Brandon?" And she had snapped back, "God, Sonny, you're so annoying." A wave of regret washed over her, so powerful it felt like it was drowning her. She sank to the curb, wrapped her arms around her knees, and finally began to sob. But this time, there was no one there to gently pat her on the back and say, "Don't cry. I'm here." My life at Carnegie Mellon was busy and fulfilling. College was more exciting than I ever imagined. I joined a robotics club and made a great group of friends who were just as passionate about it as I was. There was this one girl, Eve Adams, a genius in the computer science department, who always seemed to be around. After every club meeting, she would happen to be walking the same way and would join me on the walk back to my dorm. In the library, she'd often happen to find a seat across from me, sliding a hot coffee over without a word. I knew she was interested, but I wasn't ready for a new relationship yet. Whenever she got too close, I'd politely create some space or change the subject with a smile. Eve never pushed it. She'd just give me a little wink as if to say, "You can't run forever, Sonny." Leo would call me every now and then with updates about Candy. Apparently, she and Brandon did get together, but things weren't going well. Brandon was a natural player and started hooking up with other girls as soon as he got to UCLA. Candy had fought with him about it multiple times, even getting their resident advisor involved. I just listened and smiled. I felt nothing at all. Over Thanksgiving break, Eve asked me to try a new restaurant downtown with her. I hesitated for a second, but I ended up agreeing. She was so happy she spammed my phone with emojis. "No take-backs," she texted. "Pinky promise." I couldn't help but smile. The restaurant was nice, with warm lighting that made Eve's eyes sparkle. She was wearing a light blue dress, and her hair was tied back loosely with a red ribbon, giving her a softer look than usual. "Sonny, you have to try this," she said, placing a piece of sweet and sour chicken on my plate. "It's their specialty." I was about to thank her when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure walk through the door. It was Candy. I hadn't seen her in months. She was much thinner, and her face was pale. Her eyes met mine, and she froze. A second later, she was walking directly toward our table. "Sonny," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I finally found you." Eve looked from me to her, confused. I put down my fork. "Hey," I said calmly. "Long time no see." Tears suddenly started streaming down Candy's face. "Can I talk to you alone? Just for 5 minutes." Taking the hint, Eve stood up. "You two talk. I'm just going to use the restroom." Candy slid into Eve's seat, her fingers twisting a napkin. "Sonny, I was wrong. I was so wrong." Her tears splashed onto the table. "Brandon, he never really cared about me. He's with someone else now. He said I was too annoying." I just watched her, feeling nothing. "So," I asked, "what does that have to do with me? Can we please start over?" She grabbed my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "I regret everything, Sonny. I've thought about you every single day for the past few months." I gently pulled my hand away. "Candy, we're over." "No," she said, shaking her head frantically. "You still love me, don't you? You're just still angry with me." "Sorry," I said with a small smile. "I'm not angry anymore. It's because I just don't care anymore." The color drained from her face. Just then, Eve returned, holding 2 hot teas. "Here," she said, handing one to me. She glanced at Candy. "Would you like one?" Candy stared daggers at her. She shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "Who are you?" Eve blinked, then smiled sweetly. "I'm Sonny's classmate, and I'm also his girlfriend." I looked at Eve, surprised, but she just gave me a subtle wink. Candy looked like she'd been slapped, stumbling back a step. "So, already moved on." The tears started flowing again. "You're cruel, Sonny. You're so cruel." With that, she turned and ran out of the restaurant. He sat back down and made a face. "Sorry," she said. "I probably shouldn't have done that." I shook my head and couldn't help but laugh. "No, really. Thank you. Anytime," she said, propping her chin on her hands, her eyes shining. "And, if you wanted to, we could make it true." The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, lighting up the side of her face. And I realized her smile was warmer than any I could remember. I thought that would be the end of it, that Candy would finally give up. But the very next day, she was at my university. She was standing outside my lecture hall, looking pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes. The spark she used to have was completely gone. She was clutching a thermos tightly in her hands. When she saw me, she forced a hopeful smile. "Sonny, I made you that soup you like," she said, her voice hoarse, like she'd been crying for hours. I frowned and made no move to take it. "You don't have to do this," I said coldly. "We're over." Her smile froze, and I saw her fingers begin to tremble. But she stubbornly held it out. "I was up all night making it. Please, just have a little. You used to love." "Candy," I cut her off. "Stop talking about the past. It's over." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something, but she held it back. Finally, she just looked down at the ground and whispered, "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow." And she did. For the next 2 weeks, she was there every day. Sometimes with food, sometimes just standing in the distance, watching me with a desperate, persistent look in her eyes. People on campus started to talk. Some people felt sorry for her. Others said she was getting what she deserved. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I cornered her on a path near the library. What exactly do you want? I asked, my voice flat. She flinched but managed to meet my eyes. Sonny, I know I was wrong. I really do. Can you please just give me one more chance? No, I said, leaving no room for argument. That's impossible. The tears started instantly. Then what? She choked out. What do I have to do to make you forgive me? I'll change. I don't want anything. I just want to be with you. Candy, I said, cutting her off. Give it up. We can never go back to the way things were. She swayed on her feet as if all the strength had left her body. Then she slowly sank to the ground, wrapped her arms around her knees, and cried without making a sound. I didn't help her up. I just turned and walked away. I never saw her on campus again. Later, Leo told me that Candy had dropped out of UCLA. He said she was drinking heavily and seemed completely lost. Brandon had dumped her long ago, and her life had thrown her family into chaos. Her father had a stroke, and her mother was a wreck. She was working at some bar, just drifting through life. Leo sighed. One night she got really drunk and just cried, asking if things would be different. If she hadn't treated you that way, would she be the one standing next to you right now? I didn't have an answer for him. The years flew by. After graduation, Eve and I got married. Our wedding day was bright and sunny. The church filled with our friends and family. Eve looked beautiful in her white dress, her smile radiant. I looked at her, my heart overflowing with happiness. And just as we were exchanging rings, I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. In the very back corner of the church, a familiar figure was standing there. It was Candy. She was so thin, she was almost unrecognizable, her face as pale as a sheet of paper. She was wearing a faded old dress, and her eyes looked hollow as she stared toward the altar. For just a fraction of a second, our eyes met. She looked away instantly, as if she'd been burned, then turned and hurried out of the church. I stood there, frozen for a second. Eve gently squeezed my hand. What is it? She whispered. I snapped out of it and smiled at her. It's nothing. The heavy church doors swung shut, and Candy's silhouette vanished into the bright sunlight. About a year later, I was in my home office organizing some files when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. Sonny, did you hear? Candy is dead. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure of what to type. Another message came through. She went to Brandon's office. She grabbed him, and they jumped from the 19th floor. They both died instantly. It was a mess. My heart seized. An image of Candy at my wedding flashed in my mind. So thin, so pale like a ghost. The light had already been gone from her eyes back then. I never imagined that would be the last time I'd ever see her. When I slowly typed back. Yesterday. It was on the news, but they didn't give a lot of details. From what I heard, she'd been trying to get in touch with Brandon for a while, but he kept avoiding her. Yesterday, she just stormed into his office. They argued, and then Leo's texts felt heavy. I put my phone down and walked to the window. The sunset was painting the sky in shades of red and orange, and the city skyline was beginning to blur into the twilight. A complicated feeling settled in my chest. It wasn't sadness, but it wasn't relief either. Eve came in then, carrying a cup of hot tea. She must have seen something on my face because she asked softly, "What's wrong?" I just handed her my phone. She read the texts and was quiet for a moment before taking my hand. Are you okay? I nodded, then shook my head. I don't know. I thought I was completely over it, but hearing this, it just feels awful. She leaned her head on my shoulder and didn't ask any more questions. We just stood there in silence as the sky grew dark. A few days later, I drove to the cemetery by myself. Her parents had chosen a quiet spot for her. The headstone was simple, just her name and the dates. No picture, no epitaph. It felt like her entire life had been reduced to a whisper. I left a bouquet of white lilies and just stood there, lost in thought. The Candy I remembered was the one from high school, in her red dress, with a smile that could light up a room. The one who only had eyes for me. You came, a hoarse voice said from behind me. I turned to see Mrs. Hayes standing a few feet away, holding her own bouquet of flowers. She looked so much older, her hair almost completely white, her eyes sunken. Mrs. Hayes, I started, but I didn't know what to say. She gave me a sad smile. Towards the end, Kenny talked about you a lot. She said if she could have one do-over in her life, it would be the way she treated you. I stayed silent, a lump forming in my throat. Mrs. Hayes placed her flowers on the grave. She lost her mind, she whispered. She was lost for a long time. I think she started to lose it the day you left for college. Her voice trembled, and her own mother, I never saw it. I never saw how much love and hate she was carrying around inside her. I didn't know what to say, so I just whispered, "I'm so sorry." She shook her head. "It wasn't your fault. It was Candy. She just couldn't move on." Then she turned and walked away, her hunched back looking as fragile as a dead tree in winter. When I got home, he was in the kitchen making dinner. She stopped what she was doing as soon as I walked in and came over to hug me. "You went, didn't you?" she asked softly. I just nodded and buried my face in her shoulder. The simple, clean scent of her shampoo was calming. "Sonny, let the past stay in the past," she whispered. "You have me now. You have our future." I lifted my head and looked into her bright, clear eyes, and I nodded. She was right. Life goes on. Candy made her choices, and I had made mine a long time ago. That night, I had a dream. In it, Candy was wearing her old high school uniform, standing in a field of sunlight and smiling at me. "You have to be happy, Sonny," she said. Then she turned and ran, disappearing into the light. When I woke up, my pillow was damp. Eve was still sound asleep next to me, breathing softly. I leaned over and gently kissed her forehead, then got out of bed and went to the window. The first light of dawn was breaking on the horizon. A new day was beginning. Candy's death was like a stone dropped into a still lake. It made ripples, but eventually the water grew calm again. Life moved forward, but her story would forever be frozen in that one final, desperate moment.